Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. Do you believe in true love? What is the definition of true love to you? If you understand what love is, then you are in the right place, because in this video, we are going to take you through some of the greatest love stories of all time. The stories about people who fell in love and were willing to die for each other. Well, maybe we can regard them as some of the all-time immortal love stories. Before we start though, take time to subscribe to this channel. Number 1. Romeo and Juliet. This is probably the most recognized love story ever. It forms part of a tragedy written by William Shakespeare during his youthful career. It is a story about two young lovers who fall in love despite their feuding families. The two finally marry each other and continue with their love life despite being surrounded by their conflicting families. Their untimely death is what finally reconciles their feuding families. To take your own life for your husband or wife, isn't that an act of true love? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Number 2. Cleopatra and Mark Antony. This love story is considered one of the oldest yet very memorable and intriguing love story. In fact, the historical characters were later dramatized by Shakespeare in his first play performed by King's Men at Globe Theatre in the year 1607. The two lovebirds fell in love at first sight, and their relationship made Egypt very powerful and strong. This really bothered the Romans, but despite all the threats, the two got married. Antony's love for Cleopatra was so strong that during one battle, he got fake news about Cleopatra's death and got extremely bitter and disturbed. In fact, he threw himself on his sword at the news and died. Similarly, Cleopatra, on learning about the death of her lover, was so shocked and killed herself. Isn't this a true sacrifice for love? Number 3. Lancelot and Guinevere. The tragic love story of Sir Lancelot and Queen Guinevere is probably one of the best-known stories of Arthurian legend. Lancelot fall in love with Queen Guinevere, King Arthur's wife. Their love grew slowly, as Guinevere kept Lancelot away from her. Eventually, however, her love and passion overpowered her and the pair became lovers. One night, Sir Agravain and Sir Modred, King Arthur's nephew, led a band of 12 knights to Guinevere's chamber, where they burst in upon the lovers. Discovered, Sir Lancelot made a fighting escape, but poor Guinevere was not so lucky. She was seized and condemned to burn to death for her adultery. Fear not, Sir Lancelot returned several days later to rescue his beloved Guinevere from the fire. This whole sad affair divided the Knights of the Round Table and weakened Arthur's kingdom. Poor Lancelot ended his days as a lowly hermit, and Guinevere became a nun at Amesbury, where she died. Number 4. Tristan and Isolde. The tragic love story of Tristan and Isolde has been told and retold through various stories and manuscripts. It takes place during medieval times, during the reign of King Arthur. Isolde of Ireland was the daughter of the King of Ireland. She was betrothed to King Mark of Cornwall. King Mark sent his nephew, Tristan, to Ireland to escort Isolde back to Cornwall. During the voyage, Isolde and Tristan fell forever in love. Isolde did marry Mark of Cornwall, but could not help but love Tristan. The love affair continued after the marriage. When King Mark finally learned of the affair, he forgave Isolde, but Tristan was banned from Cornwall. Tristan went to Brittany. There he met Isolde of Brittany. He was attracted to her because of the similarity of her name to his true love. He married her, but did not consummate the marriage because of his love for the true Isolde. After falling ill, he sent for Isolde in hopes that she would be able to cure him. If she agreed to come, the returning ship's sails would be white, or the sails would be black if she did not agree. Isolde, seeing the white sails, lied to Tristan and told him that the sails were black. He died of grief before Isolde could reach him. Isolde died soon after of a broken heart. Ah, that's so heartbreaking. Number 5. Paris and Helena. Recounted in Homer's Iliad, the story of Helen of Troy and the Trojan War is a Greek heroic legend, combining fact and fiction. Helen of Troy is considered one of the most beautiful women in all literature. She was married to Menelaus, king of Sparta. Paris, son of King Priam of Troy, fell in love with Helen and abducted her, taking her back to Troy. The Greeks assembled a great army, led by Menelaus's brother, Agamemnon, to retrieve Helen. Troy was destroyed. Helen returned safely to Sparta, where she lived happily with Menelaus for the rest of her life. Number 6. Orpheus and Eurydice. Orpheus and Eurydice story is an ancient Greek tale of desperate love. Orpheus fell deeply in love with and married Eurydice, a beautiful nymph. They were very much in love and very happy together. Aristaeus, a Greek god of the land and agriculture, became quite fond of Eurydice, and actively pursued her. While fleeing from Aristaeus, Eurydice ran into a nest of snakes which bit her fatally on her legs. Distraught, Orpheus played such sad songs and sang so mournfully that all the nymphs and gods wept. On their advice, Orpheus traveled to the underworld and by his music softened the hearts of Hades and Persephone. He was the only person ever to do so, who agreed to allow Eurydice to return with him to Earth on one condition: he should walk in front of her and not look back until they both had reached the upper world. In his anxiety he forgot that both needed to be in the upper world, and he turned to look at her, and she vanished for the second time, but now forever. Number 7. Napoleon and Josephine. A marriage of convenience. At age 26 Napoleon took a fancy to Josephine. An older, prominent, and most importantly wealthy woman. As time drew on, Napoleon fell deeply in love with Josephine, and she with him, but that didn't deter the adultery on both sides. Their mutual respect for one another kept them together, and the burning passion between them didn't falter, and was genuine. They eventually split, as Napoleon deeply required something Josephine could not give him, an heir. Sadly they parted ways, both bearing the love and passion in their hearts, for all eternity. Number 8. Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett Butler. Gone with the Wind can be identified as one of the immortal pieces of literary works in this world. Margaret Mitchell's famous work has chronicled the love and hate relationship between Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett Butler. Proving that timing is everything, Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett Butler never seem to be quite in sync. Throughout the epic story, this tempestuous twosome experience passion but not permanence, and the stormy marriage reflects the surrounding Civil War battles. The flirtatious, promiscuous, and perpetually pursued Scarlett can't make up her mind between her many suitors. When she finally decides to settle on being happy with Rhett, her fickle nature has already driven him away. Hope springs eternal in our devious heroine, however, and the novel ends with Scarlett proclaiming, "Tomorrow is another day." Number 9. Jane Eyre and Rochester. In Charlotte Bronte's famous tale, friendless characters find a cure for loneliness in each other's company. Jane is an abused orphan employed as a governess to the charge of an abrasive but very rich Edward Rochester. The improbable pair grow close as Rochester reveals a tender heart beneath his gruff exterior. He does not, however, reveal his penchant for polygamy. On their wedding day, a horrified Jane discovers he is already married. Heartbroken, Jane runs away, but later returns after a dreadful fire has destroyed Rochester's mansion, killed his wife, and left him blind. Love triumphs, and the two reunite and live out their days in shared bliss. Number 10. Layla and Marj Nun. A leading medieval poet of Iran, Nizami of Ganjeh is known especially for his romantic poem Layla and Marj Nun, inspired by an Arab legend. Layla and Marj Nun is a tragic tale about unattainable love. It had been told and retold for centuries, and depicted in manuscripts and other media such as ceramics for nearly as long as the poem has been penned. Layla and Kays fall in love while at school. Their love is observed and they are soon prevented from seeing one another. In misery, Kays banishes himself to the desert to live among and be consoled by animals. He neglects to eat and becomes emaciated. Due to his eccentric behavior, he becomes known as Marj Nun, madman. There he befriends an elderly Bedouin who promises to win him Layla's hand through warfare. Layla's tribe is defeated, but her father continues to refuse her marriage to Marj Nun because of his mad behavior, and she is married to another. After the death of Layla's husband, the old Bedouin facilitates a meeting between Layla and Marj Nun, but they are never fully reconciled in life. Upon death, they are buried side by side. The story is often interpreted as an allegory of the soul's yearning to be united with the divine. Number 11. Eloise and Abelard. This is a story of a monk and a nun whose love letters became world famous. Around 1100, Peter Abelard went to Paris to study at the school of Notre Dame. He gained a reputation as an outstanding philosopher. Fulbert, the canon of Notre Dame, hired Abelard to tutor his niece, Heloise. Abelard and the scholarly Heloise fell deeply in love, conceived a child, and were secretly married. But Fulbert was furious, so Abelard sent Heloise to safety in a convent. Thinking that he intended to abandon Heloise, Fulbert had his servants castrate Abelard while he slept. Abelard became a monk and devoted his life to learning. The heartbroken Heloise became a nun. Despite the separations and tribulations, Abelard and Heloise remained in love. Their poignant love letters were later published. Number 12. Elizabeth Bennet and Darcy. Actually, Jane Austen has personified two attributes of human nature, pride and prejudice, in Darcy and Elizabeth. Darcy comes from a very high social hierarchy in Pemberley. He typifies the educated aristocracy, while on the other hand, Elizabeth is the second daughter of a gentleman of modest means. Mr. Bennet has 5 daughters who have been allowed to grow up the way they wanted. There has been no school education for them, nor has there been any governess at home. Elizabeth's very indulgent mother and irresponsible father never gave any thought to the future of the daughters. It is always taken for granted that they will do well for themselves. To a woman of Mrs. Bennet's understanding, doing well exclusively means finding a rich, well-to-do husband. For a man of Darcy's social stature, these were very serious failings of the family and totally unacceptable to his polished, educated and refined mind. Darcy adores Pemberley, and the future mistress of that estate can only be just as polished and refined and from an equally prestigious family. He falls in love with Elizabeth only to be refused by her initially, and then much later she realized that she can love no one but Darcy. How they become united and understand the love for each other makes very interesting study. Number 13. Pocahontas and John Smith. This love story is a famous legend in the history of America. Pocahontas, an Indian princess, was the daughter of Powhatan. Powhatan was the powerful chief of the Algonquin Indians in the Tidewater region of Virginia. Pocahontas for the first time in her life saw Englishmen in May 1607. She found John Smith most attractive and developed a liking for him. Smith was taken to the official residence of Powhatan and he was tortured. It was Pocahontas who saved his life from the attack of the Indians. Pocahontas then helped Smith to stand on his feet and Powhatan adopted Smith as his son. This incident helped Pocahontas and Smith to become friends with each other. Pocahontas after this incident made frequent visits to the Jamestown and passed on to the Indians messages of her father. John Smith, after getting badly injured due to gunpowder explosion, returned to England. When Pocahontas made a visit to the fort, she was informed that Smith was dead. Sometime after, Pocahontas was taken prisoner by Sir Samuel Argall. Argall hoped to use Pocahontas as a bargaining chip with her father Powhatan in effort to get English prisoners returned. During her captivity, she decided to become a Christian, taking the name Rebecca when she was baptized. A year later, she married John Rolfe. She made a visit to London, where he met his friend John Smith after 8 long years, and it was their last meeting. Number 14. Marie and Pierre Curie. This is a story about partners in love and science. Unable to continue her studies in Poland because universities did not admit women, Maria Sklodowska-Curie traveled to Paris in 1891 to attend the Sorbonne. Known by the French Marie, she spent every spare hour reading in the library or in the laboratory. The industrious student caught the eye of Pierre Curie, director one of the laboratories where Marie worked. Curie ardently wooed Marie and made several marriage proposals. They were finally married in 1895 and began their famous partnership. In 1898 they discovered polonium and radium. The Curies and scientist Henry Becquerel won a Nobel Prize for Physics in 1903 for discovering radioactivity. When Curie died in 1904, Marie pledged to carry on their work. She took his place at the Sorbonne, becoming the school's first female teacher. In 1911 she became the first person to win a second Nobel Prize, this time for chemistry. She continued to experiment and lecture until her death of leukemia in 1934, driven by the memory of the man she loved. Number 15. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. This love story is about English royalty who mourned her husband's death for 40 years. Victoria was a lively, cheerful girl, fond of drawing and painting. She ascended the throne of England in 1837 after the death of her uncle, King William IV. In 1840, she married her first cousin, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. While at first Prince Albert was unpopular in some circles because he was German, he came to be admired for his honesty, diligence, and his devotion to his family. The couple had 9 children. Victoria loved her husband deeply. She relied on his advice in matters of state, especially in diplomacy. When Albert died in 1861, Victoria was devastated. She did not appear in public for 3 years. Her extended seclusion generated considerable public criticism. Several attempts were made on Victoria's life. However, under the influence of Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli, Victoria resumed public life, opening Parliament in 1866. But Victoria never stopped mourning her beloved prince, wearing black until her death in 1901. During her reign, the longest in English history, Britain became a world power on which the sun never set. So, which love story intrigued you the most? You can share with us. Till the next video, bye and stay safe.